Hello, world, and welcome back to week 12 of Roto-World's DFS Building Block Show. As always, I'm your host, John Daigle, joined by who else? Friend in life, Hayden Winks, as we are here on a very special day to discuss what should have been a 3-game DFS slate and has become a 2-game DFS slate. Hayden, how's everything going?
Good. We're all going to be thankful for splitting the Millie Maker with all of our closest thousands of friends this week. So at least we have something to be thankful for.
I was really excited to see people spend too much money and play Marquise Brown to get one catch for 13 yards. But alas, here we are. I think a lot of the edge is gone. I got to be honest. I think ownership will trickle down to DeAndre Swift if he plays. I think Deshaun Watson, you have to try to find a way to get unique off of him because he's far and away the best quarterback on the slate. And I hate that the third game was removed, to be honest. Having said that, we're still here. We're going to talk about everything. We're going to go team by team, actually. And what we want to do to get started, since it is such a unique slate, is to actually start with the injury reports here, to just discuss what has happened already. So I'm going to open this right here. Bada bing. We're also going head-to-head accidentally with friends of the show, Mike Leone and Drew Dinkmeyer, as they also do their Thanksgiving slate. So here is the first injury report. Hayden, go ahead and walk us through some important notes here for the Texans.
So with the Texans, Randall Cobb and Kenny Stills are going to be out. So that's going to leave Kiki Kute into the number 3 job. And then we also have to worry about the Texans probably using 2 tight end sets more often. So I think that we'll talk about Jordan Akins in a second. I think Darren Fells and Pharaoh Brown are a little bit more in play if you're trying to completely punt off the tight end position. But the Detroit Lions is the bigger injury report to keep a track of. Danny Amendola is out. Kenny Golladay is out. So we have to try to figure out who's going to be the third receiver. And we all have to look at DeAndre Swift, who's probably the only big missing ingredient to the slate. He went DNP limited. That tells me that he's probably not going to play because he has to clear concussion protocol within 24 hours for the morning game. So I'm guessing DeAndre Swift is on the wrong side of questionable here. So right now when I'm building my lineups, I'm assuming DeAndre Swift is out, looking at Kerryon Johnson and Adrian Peterson as better plays.
So this is my issue with the Lions, is that we say we have to figure out who is going to take over for Kenny Golladay and Danny Amendola. The issue is that we know. And the second issue is that it doesn't matter, in my opinion, unless you have another spin, because now we have 5 full games for Stafford without Kenny Golladay. He's averaged 6.8 yards per attempt. He's gone under 6 yards per attempt in 2 of his past 3 contests. And quite frankly, if DeAndre Swift is out, like Dr. Chow and you were suggesting, and we know Kenny Golladay is out, this offense is just bad, even against the Texans defense. This offense is just terrible. So to me, as we start here with, how do you want to do this? Do you want to go to the Washington report first and then build lineups for each team? Or do you want to go ahead and jump into it right now?
We can go into see the Washington injury report just to see, but I do think the Lions matter because they're all the bring back options for all of the Houston stacks, and the Houston stacks are going to be by far the most popular. So we do need to spend time on who these guys are going to be, because at least there's going to be a one-off play. Like I get it, and I think the other thing is like the Lions have been bad, and I think they'll still be bad, but at least they're playing Houston.
Correct. Let's go ahead and jump into this then. Antonio Gibson, it's a short week. Don't worry about these DNPs to start the week. We've seen that time and time again. It is tremendous and encouraging that McLaurin was upgraded to full, so we fully expect him to play tomorrow. And then, of course, Dontrell Inman was the one I was watching because Cam Sims actually quietly ran 27 routes on Alex Smith's 28 dropbacks this past week. But now, since we expect Inman back, of course, and McLaurin back, I don't think Sims matters whatsoever. Whereas Steven Sims, in my opinion, maybe does matter because he's the slot receiver when both of these guys are healthy.
Yeah, so this was going to be like my main goal of this, is trying to figure out the Washington rotation. Mm-hmm. I have written down, obviously, McLaurin's playing every snap. I have Dontrell Inman over Cam Sims as the second outside receiver. It sounds like you're agreeing with me, because the difference was Dontrell Inman's missed like 5 games and Cam Sims was in that role. This is Dontrell Inman's first game back, and we're guessing that he's going to go back into the starting role, but we're not fully sure of that yet. So that's one thing we have to get right. And then the other thing is who's going to play the slot. Isaiah Wright's been playing there some. Steven Sims is the guy that I have projected for. So that's McLaurin, Dontrell Inman, Steven Sims as the starting receivers in 3 wide rotations. The issue is some of these guys are going to play regardless, even if they're not the full-time starters. So do you agree it's McLaurin, Inman, Steven Sims as the starting receivers for Washington?
Yeah, Steven Sims is 100% the slot receiver.
Okay.
So we'll talk about game environment here in a second. Also be aware that Josh Norris's brother, Jared Norris, is out. So you got to be careful there. And, of course, naming the Washington's 3 wide set is important because Anthony Brown, the team's number 2 quarterback since Javon Diggs for 6 weeks, on IR, I believe, with that foot injury. DNP early in the week, clearly, and then limited. And Michael Gelkin, one of the better beat reporters for the Cowboys, has been pretty consistent that Anthony Brown is going to miss this game, which, of course, would then give them a horrific nickel package against Washington's 3 wide sets. My concern for this one, though, is that I think Cowboys pass pro last week was a bad 1-game sample. Perhaps it does hold up, but I will say, of course, what they did was they shifted Zach Martin to right tackle, had Joe Looney replace Tyler Biadasz at center, and then Dalton was only pressured on 4 of 34 dropbacks. Pretty much squeaky clean, took 1 sack all game. That was against Minnesota's bad pass rush, though. Now it is Washington's, which is top 5 in sacks collected, top 6 in pressure rate on the year. So I actually don't mind, and I don't think the betting is actually accounting for this, but I think Washington is the better play overall. And if that's the case, then we can take away J.D. McKissick, who is pretty much only getting the targets and negative game script, even though he is on the field at the same time these past 2 weeks with Antonio Gibson, and go to Antonio Gibson in a positive game script with a lead.
Yeah. What do you want to do? You want to go team by team? I think I said let's go team by team and try to build like kind of lineups. If you were going to go this direction, how would you play off of it?
All right. We got the question, and keep your questions coming in, by the way. We'll continue to pull them up throughout the show. What we decided to do, what Hayden decided to do, and I agree with the method, is to go team by team, build lineups and run backs with these teams, and then we'll see what happens. And again, you have to get creative, not bad contrarian plays, but you have to get contrarian because most likely what we're looking at is splitting the big, large entry tournaments. Like it's 4 games. It's not really one that one person is going to take it away, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be leaving money on the table, but
you have to leave salary on the table. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to just be like only trying to win by myself though. Like the reality is like whoever's going to be winning this is going to be a split. So like, I don't think that like your only goal is to be winning the slate by being the only person with that lineup. Like I think you have to kind of suck it up and just realize that like the most likely outcome is we're going to be splitting this thing. So with that said, let's get Deshaun Watson at quarterback. He's going to be the most owned quarterback by far on whatever site you're playing on.
Okay.
Obviously, rightfully so. So if you're going for the full Deshaun Watson fade, I get it for tournaments. But yeah, he's clearly the best play.
Do you have any preference between Fuller and Cooks? I would still say Cooks.
Yeah, I think either or. And I'm kind of debating going just one of the two and not building lineups with both Cooks and Fuller, because I think of all of the lineups that are going to have Deshaun Watson at quarterback, most of them are going to have both of them in. And the theory I have is if you use just one and you pivot to either Kiki Kute or Jordan Akins, who's my favorite of the bunch, and not using both receivers in the same lineup, you're at least getting a little differentiated from like the chalky Cooks, Fuller, and Deshaun stacks. So my preference would be Deshaun Watson, Will Fuller with Jordan Akins. And Daigle, I went on last night. I looked at all of the red zone trips for the Texans on all 22. And basically what you see is Jordan Akins is the guy, if they're going to use 2 tight end sets, which we kind of project to happen a little bit more because their slot receiver is out. When Darren Fells comes in, he's the tight end that's attached to the offensive line, and the inline spot, Jordan Akins goes either in the slot or is detached from the line. He's the guy that's going to be running most of the routes. Darren Fells, when he comes in, a lot of the times he's blocking. So I'm very comfortable putting Jordan Akins in at the tight end spot with Deshaun stacks.
Friendly guys ask, Texan stacks, of course. So in this particular show, since there's only 4 teams, we are going to build 4 different stacks here and just see what else we can come up with. Also, you can take it upon yourself. We're clearly here to guide you, but take it upon yourself and just ask, because with these shorter slates, showdowns, 2 games, 3 games, you have to tell a story with every single lineup. So basically, the 2 stories I will be telling myself tomorrow for sure, I know, will be Deshaun Watson in a unique double stack, getting a 3-score lead over the Lions, right? And then the Lions using Kerryon Johnson and negative game script, because that's why Kerryon Johnson played a season high 70% of the snaps last week. Adrian Peterson actually got 7 carries, but all of those 7 carries came in the first half while it was a competitive game. They're not going to use Peterson to catch passes. That would be Johnson's role. So that's why I'm pretty much jamming Kerryon Johnson everywhere, because again, I don't think the Lions have it at all if Swift is ruled out, because they just have no playmakers here. I will also say another one, and I'm going to, by the way, I think QT is going to come in overexposed. He's someone I don't mind going underweight, because I don't think we need the salary on this slate. I mean, you're going to leave money on the table anyways, but like everyone's going to play him thinking they need a cheap player. I don't even think you need a cheap player on this slate, because there aren't many like great options. Like you look at running back and Zeke is the main priority and he's 6,800. So like there's really no one we're trying to shove in these lineups. So I will take Jordan Akins over QT in a vacuum, and we'll make that the double stack here. Perfect. Also, I do want to say, though, that QT is the double dip with the Texans defense, because he's the punt returner. So if you want to go Texans defense against a bad Lions offense, presumably, with QT, that's fine too, because you're going to get double the points in your DFS team. So that's something I'll also play around with. Maybe even Watson, Cooks, QT, and the Texans defense, and you can still play Kerryon against that defense.
Yeah, I think with defenses, I don't think that you need to worry about who's playing against them. Like if you have 2 guys going against your own defense, just throw all that stuff out the window. Whoever has the touchdown on defense here is going to win the slate most likely. So just play whoever.
Would it be Kerryon for you, or is there someone else like Marvin Jones, TJ Hawkinson that you have in mind? Well, not TJ Hawkinson, because we're playing Akins, even though maybe double tight end lineup is an option tomorrow.
I think that was popping some optimals actually, but yeah, I think, well, that's a good point. I think with all of these, just stacking the tight end in your own, don't pick a tight end from the other game of your quarterback. Like keep it in the same game at least. With this, I would either go Marvin Jones, Marvin Hall, or Kerryon Johnson. I'm fine with Kerryon Johnson and then finding the receivers from the other game and going that route. Maybe Marvin Hall or Marvin Jones as well, but let's see what it spits out.
I can't, and for the life of me, go Marvin Hall. I can't do it. Like I understand behind the scenes was there, but like Marvin Hall is not the kind of guy who gets 8 targets. Like that's just not Marvin Hall game.
He is the guy that popped for a 55-yard touchdown, speeds up the game though. But like I get it. Yeah, it's like
correct. Yeah,
he's gonna have like 4 targets.
But like the usage was there last week against the Panthers, and like it didn't matter because it's Marvin Hall at the end of the day. Right. So yeah, I already talked about Washington football. They're being, unless you're going to play QT, Washington is my favorite defense. They'll also probably be the highest rostered. Maybe the contrarian option would be the Cowboys defense because no one's going to play them. But anyway, so that it also stuffs a 4-way stack here with Duke Johnson. My only issue with Duke Johnson is that we used to be able to say that he was getting all the touches. Like, 2 weeks ago, he was bad. He gets all the touches. Last week, he wasn't catching passes. Doesn't matter. He's getting the rest of the touches. This past week, CJ Pro size 15% of the snaps and 5 touches. So, and this is a team that is barely getting its running back touches at all because Deshaun Watson doesn't check down. So that's the problem in rostering Duke Johnson here. Having said that, the Lions, of course, have allowed the second most fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. The Texans have allowed the most fantasy points per game. So maybe it's a Duke Johnson game. I don't know right now either way if I'll be playing him or not.
I think Duke Johnson's a great play in non-Deshaun Watson stacks because you're getting obviously a ton of leverage off of the most owned quarterback, probably the most owned player of the week. So I think Duke Johnson's good leverage in non-Deshaun Watson lineups. I think you can get away with them in big fields together, though. This game strip, it's Deshaun throws for 2 touchdowns, runs one in, and then Duke Johnson eats in the fourth quarter, and it's a complete blowout. That's like the story you have to tell with this lineup. I think this is actually a pretty good lineup, and like you're highlighting right there, you're leaving a lot of money on the table as well. So I think that this is like a pretty standard good way to attack the slate, is like a lineup like this.
I actually like this lineup a whole lot because it avoids Dallas altogether, because we saw whenever Dallas also gets in the dumps and their offense isn't moving the ball, Zeke is literally the least impactful player in the entire league. I don't think that was a coming back to earth moment last week. He got 21 carries. He delivered 100 yards on them, for better than worse, against bad Minnesota front seven. So that's why I don't even feel the need to play Zeke in this slate, honestly. I don't think it's a priority. I saw that friend of the show always shows up and watches, double stacking Pollard and Zeke. The only issue with that, if you're telling yourself that the Cowboys win, I'll go ahead and delete this and play a Matthew Stafford lineup just to see what we get going, by the way. If you're telling yourself that the Cowboys are going to keep it competitive or win the game, I'm totally fine with that, because it might be a run-heavy attack to keep Andy Dalton from being on his back on the entire game, because they know the Washington's front seven is coming for them. They already played once this year. Antonio Gibson, J.D. McKissick absolutely murdered the Cowboys front seven. Were not stopped whatsoever. And in that game, it wasn't Dalton. It was, who was the second starter they played? Not DiNucci, but
Gilbert.
Was it Gilbert? No, so it was DiNucci then. Was that the DiNucci game?
They started with DiNucci and then it went to Gilbert after.
Okay, cool. So yeah, and then those players were absolutely murdered by the pass rush, so they know what's coming. Having said that, Pollard had 60 yards this past week, and 48 of them came on one touchdown run. Like, he just broke free up the middle. I was watching the game, so that's what I'm worried about, because the usage just isn't there. Like, he was out touched 23-5 still.
I wouldn't play these guys together. I think Pollard's viable in big field tournaments. Zeke's hamstring pops up on a short week or something like that, but I wouldn't play them together. Like, for both of those guys to be in optimals, like, crazy stuff would have to happen. So I guess in huge tournaments, but I'm not going to do it.
All right. So we're telling ourselves a story now with the Lions. The Lions are competitive. How are they competitive? I'm actually leaning towards they would be competitive on the back of Adrian Peterson, believe it or not, more so. So Stafford might get the touchdown equity. He might have like 240 yards and 3 TDs. But if they are successful, I think that means because the running game is working for them, since we do know the Texans are allowing the most rushing yards per game on the entire season. So I actually would avoid carry on in that case and play Adrian Peterson. But if you want to double stack Stafford, I'm listening.
Yeah, I think that Adrian Peterson's certainly interesting, especially the longer that Swift is like up in the air, then people might just avoid the Lions running backs altogether. And in that case, Adrian Peterson probably comes in a little lower than he should. I think for the sake of this, let's build a double stack with Stafford and kind of see what we spit out. I think Matthew Stafford to TJ Hawkinson is like the best play if you're making one lineup. I do think Matthew Stafford to Jesse James is a really good way in bigger tournaments, because you're getting leverage off of TJ Hawkinson, who's probably going to be the highest rostered tight end. Jesse James is at least out there in the end zone area as well. So I think Matthew Stafford to Jesse James to like differentiate if you're going to go this route. I don't think you have to do this if you're building just one lineup, but I think that if you're building a couple, I think that Jesse James is pretty interesting.
Do you have Jesse James red zone usage in front of you?
I don't, but
I can pull it up in 1 second. No big deal.
I do know that he runs like around a dozen routes per game. The other thing that you're kind of getting some equity from is TJ Hawkinson has been kind of limited these last couple of weeks with a toe injury, and this is on a short week. He's off the injury report. He should be totally fine to go, but in the event there's like a flare for something, then Jesse James becomes a little more interesting. So once again, like, this is more like I'm playing multiple lineups. How do I want to get different? I think Jesse James would be an option.
I have it right here. Jesse James is 4th of the team. He has 5 red zone targets, and then he has 2 end zone targets. Hawkinson has 11 and 8, both team highs. So, okay. Saying on a short week, just in case it flares up. I don't know if that's what I'd be doing, but that's fine. Let's just run it. Again, I want Cooks over Fuller, but if I think I would let ownership tell me what to do. Like if Fuller's going to come in 10% less, if not more than Cooks, I would just play Fuller. Kind of like how we treated the Bucks guys on the showdown slate. Whereas you played Mike Evans because he was going to be the lower roster between Brown and Godwin. I'm just going to let ownership tell me the story on this one.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing. I think that, both of them have passed the ceilings. Jeff Okudah, I believe, is out.
Mm-hmm. He's been like really bad.
He's been bad.
He's been awful this year.
But he's still probably as good as the god over there. Let's see what it has.
All right, so this one is Gibson, Cooper, Washington, McLaurin on the comeback. No J.D. McKissick popping up just yet. Also,
it's a good lineup too.
Yeah, my only thing is that Duke Johnson would definitely not be in my Texans negative game script narratives because, again, Deshaun Watson doesn't dump down. If anything, that would be Jordan Akins because we know, I still question if he's going to play in competitive games, but we know he's going to play in negative game scripts. So any staff or double stacks, in my opinion, have to be brought back with at least Akins and one of the pass catchers.
Yeah, that's certainly interesting. I would say that Duke Johnson at least helps in this scenario because if he scores, that means Deshaun didn't score. And if Stafford's going to win and be the thing, then Deshaun Watson can't go berserk. So I think that there's a little bit of this. Once again, when you're dealing with a two-game slate, you're not trying to find the most ludicrous things to happen, but you need to think a little bit outside the box.
Right.
I think both of those lineups the optimizer spit out were totally viable.
I still love the first one a lot, a whole lot.
Yeah, that was good.
I'm going to probably play something very similar to that. Okay, so Alex Smith, who in my personal opinion is the one other quarterback I'd roster on this entire slate that is not Deshaun Watson because we've seen the upside. I know he dumps the ball off. I know his average depth of target's extremely low, but we also know how poor the Cowboys secondary is in tackling and the fact that Washington is filled with explosive playmakers that can turn the ball upfield, a lot like the Saints. So it doesn't matter that he's dumping the ball off. But any negative game script for Washington stories have to include J.D. McKissick, of course, because that's where he would go. So I am forcing McKissick into this lineup, whether you want it or not. I would listen to Sims over McLaurin, but McLaurin still pretty good if you're going to play Alex Smith, obviously.
Yeah, I think I'm going to make sure I would have McLaurin in it. Things would have to get really crazy if Alex Smith gets there and McLaurin doesn't, because we've seen the target share with McLaurin and he's the big guy. So I think we're already getting unique enough with just McKissick and Alex Smith that we can jam in McLaurin and see what it goes from there. Do you have a lean on favorite Cowboys receiver? I know you're down on the team in general, but just a guy, if you were going to pick in the vacuum, just who's probably the most likely to have a big game?
It would be, I would pick Amari Cooper, even though 2-game slates are pretty much built for Michael Gallup, who is either going to sink your lineup or win the whole damn thing. So, Michael Gallup's a really good one, honestly. His usage didn't change despite the additional pass pro, and the box score misses a drop he had. It was underthrown, honestly, but it was in double coverage. Dalton threw it over the 2 corners, and Gallup reached back for it and just dropped it. So, if he brought that in, his box score includes 40 extra yards. And this is just one of those games that he could absolutely explode in, or at least get 100 yards and a touchdown, which matters so much. You have to have it in your lineup if it happens.
Big time. Yeah. Yeah, I'm fine with it. I think all of the Cowboys guys are certainly in play. I think, would you lock button Zeke in Alex Smith lineups?
No.
Okay.
No. I could be wrong there, but no. Okay, so looking at these running backs, though, I'm trying to figure out if you don't play Zeke, it would have to be one of Carry-On or Adrian Peterson.
Yeah, or Duke.
Yeah. And then
I think Duke, this is a good spot to play Duke, because if Alex Smith is winning, that means Deshaun Watson didn't have 30 points, because I don't think Alex Smith really has 30 points in his range of outcomes very often at all. So I think that Duke Johnson, this is where it becomes the game theory, where Duke Johnson, we don't like him. We think he sucks. We think the offensive line sucks. He is not catching passes, all those things, blah, blah, blah. But if Alex Smith's going to win this thing, that means Deshaun Watson didn't go berserk. So maybe that's Duke Johnson.
That's a really good point. Also, we probably can't put Antonio Gibson. He could still score from inside the 10, but we can't put Antonio Gibson in our Alex Smith stacks unless you just think the Washington offense altogether goes nuclear, which is possible. Certainly possible.
Yeah. I'm not going to be doing it, but yeah, I agree.
That's fine. The more I think about it, though, because even if you double stack, which we'll do in a second, Dalton, playing McKissick makes a lot of sense here. McKissick's floor and a 2-game slate, like even if it's like 9 points, that's so important. Even to, I know we're not trying to make the money, we're trying to win here, but man, like his floor in a 2-game slate's pretty safe, honestly. So the more we talk it out, like the more interested I become in locking him in. This, of course,
McKissick's good.
Yeah. So what happens here is this only plays Duke Johnson and Marvin Jones from that game. And then it basically stacks this entire game, which doesn't even have to be negative game script. It can be, and it also plays McKissick and Gibson together, which is also extremely unique. I don't think anyone's going to think to do that, honestly. And we've seen the past 2 weeks, both of them can get there. So that might be another thing I do, honestly.
Yeah, I think that's pretty interesting. Do you have a take between Dalton Schultz versus Logan Thomas? I think with all of these tight ends, it literally just comes down to which quarterback are you playing? Like, I don't think that like deciding between, unless you're playing cash, Dalton Schultz versus Logan Thomas. I just think like stack it up. Is the tight end in your game? If yes, then he's in play.
I completely agree. Like if the guy gets a touchdown, you might as well try and get the quarterback's touchdown as well. Right. Because none of these guys, like as much as we love Hawkinson salivating athleticism, it just doesn't matter. Like he's a 50-yard guy and nothing more who may luck into a touchdown. So if you're playing Hawkinson, you're playing Stafford, the list goes on and on. I don't think Logan Thomas is a bad play, honestly, but I'm playing Alex Smith with Logan Thomas for sure.
Yep. Everyone remember Texans linebacker Bernard McKinney is probably their best linebacker. He's been out. So the Antonio Gibson's, Logan Thomas's, guys that are going to be attacking the middle of the field. That's why the Texans have been so bad recently against the run. All right, so Andy Dalton time?
Yes, Andy Dalton time. And admittedly, I can already tell you Andy Dalton's not going to be in my pool, even my small pool for a 2-game slate. I just really think the Cowboys offense told us a lie last week. I'm not convinced in this tougher matchup. The only reason I wouldn't play Washington's defense is because I'm expecting them to come in 20 or 30% higher owned than other defenses, which makes QT and Texans really interesting, honestly. But we can figure that out in a bit. So Andy Dalton, do you have any discrepancy? Do you have any preferences here? Because their targets have been literally right there with one another. I believe on Andy Dalton's like 130 plus dropbacks this year, Cooper has one more target than Lamb, and Gallup and Schultz are tied in targets.
Yeah, I like CeeDee Lamb. I just think that I want to be betting on
rookie as well, by the way.
Yeah, I want to just be betting on rookie receivers in the second half of years, especially when we've seen them ball out already. And we've been seeing CeeDee Lamb go nuts with like Noah Brown and Cedric Wilson, like stealing some routes. Like if CeeDee Lamb ever gets the full-time route role, I mean, the sky is the limit. He's such a stud. So I would go with Dalton. I like CeeDee Lamb the best, and then Amari Cooper afterwards.
Okay, so if we're playing CeeDee Lamb, we're also playing Cowboys defense because CeeDee Lamb's the punt returner.
Perfect.
And then if this is the case, Amari Cooper, I still believe has the highest floor of all of them too, by the way.
Yeah, let's roll with this.
If that's the case, then negative game script. So we're playing J.D. McKissick.
Okay.
I know you don't like J.D. McKissick, but I think
he's fine.
I think he's really important to the slate, honestly.
Yeah.
And then let's spit this out, see what happens. But also, I would be inclined to play McLaurin in this lineup as well.
Yes.
And it shoves him in. Okay, so I'm okay with that. So then we get the Dalton double stack with Antonio Gibson and McLaurin as well, and Dalton Schultz at tight end with Duke Johnson playing him, getting the touchdown equity. This is my, with what here, 2,900 left over. This is actually my second favorite lineup to the first one. This one will be much more unique than that first one with Deshaun Watson, just in not having Deshaun Watson in the lineup. And I prefer still Alex Smith to Dalton and think I'd just shove him in instead, but keep the rest of this lineup the same. If not, just like Alex Smith, maybe a different tight end. I don't know.
I do think that the double Washington running backs in the Cowboys stacks makes some sense because Antonio Gibson can get there on a big play, which we haven't even fully seen like the 60-yard touchdown from Antonio Gibson, and that is like well within the range of outcomes. We've seen Cowboys leak huge runs in the past. Antonio Gibson's got all the athleticism. So I think that Antonio Gibson and J.D. McKissic, if I was going to be playing both of them together, it would be with Dalton stacks, because you can get there, speed up the game with Antonio Gibson, and you need the comeback mode for J.D. McKissic to be on the field. So I think this line is pretty good.
Yeah, I would as well. I wouldn't play Dalton with Zeke in this game or in this slate. I would pick one. So if you don't play Zeke, maybe you do still play Dalton. That's interesting.
I like Dalton on this slate.
Maybe I'll come up.
I get what you're saying against the Vikings, like, because the Vikings are bad, and I do think that the Cowboys are going to come in the rest of the year and be like functional, like not good, but not horrendous. Like, I think we've seen the worst of the Cowboys, and I think last week was probably a little bit better than what we can expect down the stretch. But I think somewhere around there where they're at least functional for the rest of the year makes sense, just because they're skill guys.
I guess the question also is Zeke a guy who's going to bury you in this slate if DeAndre Swift is out? Because then really, like, you have to get creative to match him. Yeah. I don't think he does bury you, honestly. Of course, if you get it wrong, but I think the probabilities of get it wrong are a coin toss, honestly, because remember that like the 3-4 games prior, like it didn't even matter that he was getting 20 touches.
I do think if Zeke gets more than 15 points, you're done. Like if you faded him, I think that's all it takes, because we don't have like high quality running backs and we don't have that much money to spend elsewhere anyway. So like the only reason you're fading Zeke is to like really get contrarian with how much money you're leaving left over. But in that event, like you really need Duke Johnson to go nuts, or Kerryon Johnson, or one of these Washington guys to go nuts, because you need like Zeke to fail and other players to get there, because you're not like spending money on like Devontae Adams. Like we don't have that guy on the slate.
So let's say you have, I don't know how many lineups you're going to play or whatever, but let's say you have like a 10. Like how many are you playing Zeke in?
9, 8.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
I think you can play. I think you can play Zeke and Dalton together, just because you're fine. Where are you finding these running back points? I think that there's ways that Dalton and Zeke get there. Like you need like an okay game from Zeke and a really good game from Dalton in that scenario. So I think you can play both of them.
Okay, let's lock in 2 running backs and let's just do this once more and then let it figure out. So let's play Zeke, and then who else?
Let's go with, if we're not using Deshaun Watson, then Duke Johnson. If we're using Deshaun Watson, then we're going J.D. McKissic. I'm with you on the McKissic stuff. Okay,
let's go McKissic, and then and then we'll let it decide. I'll let it decide. I'm not going to X out Deshaun Watson. We'll do both really quick before we get out of here. So plays Deshaun Watson, unsurprisingly. Marvin Jones is the run back, and then Dalton Schultz. Although in this case,
Aiken season,
it actually, it doesn't play a Texans receiving option. So in this case, which is not actually that bad, because everyone's going to play Watson with his receivers. No one will play Watson strictly with Jordan Akins. And then we also have Duke Johnson available as well. So that's actually not that bad, honestly.
Yeah. I think if I was gonna say, all right, who is like one guy I want to say like is my guy of the slate over everyone else, it would be Jordan Akins. Like his role seems pretty safe. He looks way more athletic than the other receivers they have there. He's involved in the red zone. I think his ownership is going to be a lot lower than Will Fuller and Brandon Cooks. And I don't think I want to be playing Cooks and Fuller together, because I think more than half of the Deshaun builds are going to have both of those receivers in them.
Okay, and if that's the case, let's do this. X them out. Let's go Duke Johnson. We'll still lock in Zeke. That's fine. And then let's see what else we get here. And by the way, someone asked, forgot to mention it out. App are we guys using? Matt, that would be the Roto-World Toolkit, dfs.rotoworld.com. And right now, if you go to the Twitter account at rotoworld_FB, I believe there is a discount going on, a slashed Black Friday sale. So there's a code on there. Go check that out. Maybe I'll pull it up here while Hayden talks. But anyways, Hayden, walk us through this lineup. This, by the way, is the one where we X'd out Deshaun Watson, not in whatsoever, and we took the touchdown equity for Duke Johnson.
Yeah, I think you're getting with Terry McLaurin in there, and that's how Alex Smith reaches a ceiling. I think I would try to get Logan Thomas in this lineup if I could. I do think that Alex Smith and Antonio Gibson, I'm not sure if I would play those guys together. But I think you can very easily just take this lineup, switch out Antonio Gibson for J.D. McKissick, and then that's a really solid lineup. I'm kind of with you with the Alex Smith stuff. I think it's certainly possible. At least we know where the ball is going with McLaurin, Logan Thomas, and then J.D. McKissick.
Right. And then let's see here. I just had the tab.
I retweeted it.
There it is. All right. Products.rotoworld.com will take you here. And then, of course, you can figure it out from here. And then also there is let's see here. The promo code is THANKS20. Again, the promo code is THANKS20. So feel free to use that. With that being said, though, that's everything. We went through every team. That's the 2 games. It's somewhat a unique slate. I'm actually, you got me a little more excited about it because I was very pissed off that the third game was taken away. I understand. I'm not pissed taken away, but all these games should be taken away if they have that many viruses. Anyways, also, I was just upset that we got those options taken away because I think some bad plays were going to be made in that third game, and now we're not going to be able. People were going to play James Conner, Marquise Brown, and I just thought they were a waste of time, even on a 2-game slate. Yeah. So, anyways, I am excited now that we are pretty confident DeAndre Swift will get ruled out, and we are going to see what happens. With that being said, though, any other overarching thoughts that we missed?
Just tell yourself the story. I know it's super stupid to say, but when you're building these lineups, find which players, because a lot of these running backs are only playing in one game script. Take advantage of that. Take advantage of the tight ends being paired with the quarterback in that game. And then you're just kind of hopefully that you grab the other receivers that end up scoring the touchdown from the other game. But yeah, outside of that, we're good to go. Unfortunately, we don't get the late swap very much here. You're kind of stuck with your lineup regardless. So that was the big thing that was kind of disappointing is you're not getting the late swap action.
That's what I'll say is that one, make sure your afternoon guys, so the Cowboys-Washington game, make sure they're in your flex. If you're make sure they're in your flex, because if you get the game script wrong for the Texans, Lions, let's say you have Duke Johnson, Deshaun Watson goes off. Remember, there's only one way to make it up, and that's to get off the higher owned guys in the afternoon game. So even if McLaurin's the better player, you get off McLaurin if you have him in the afternoon game because you already got the first game wrong, and you go to Cam Sims or Steven Sims, for instance, hoping McLaurin gets injured, or maybe McLaurin just doesn't get the targets, he gets double covered. You have to be aware of that. Also, make sure you're not over guys that cannibalize one another and do not have standalone value. That is not the case, in my opinion, for Gibson and McKissick, but it is the case for, I don't know, let's say, to make it easy, Jesse James, G. Hawkinson. You're not playing them together at all with Stafford. That doesn't make much sense because they both won't go off. So just make sure you're not overlapping as well.
Daigle, do you have somebody that's under, let's say, 4,000 that you have any conviction on, that you want to be overweight? My guy's Jordan Akins. Do you have anyone like that?
Jordan Akins good. It would be Steven Sims for me. Again, I don't know if I'm going to play him, but very confidently he is the starting slot receiver. And Cam Sims only played because Dontrell Inman is out, but now Dontrell Inman's back in. So Steven Sims is right there, and maybe everyone will be turned off from his usage last week, but we know he's the slot receiver against the team's third string quarterback.
Yep. Okay. Real quick, I'll plug. I have a Thanksgiving blueprint that I have kind of laid out. I have my positional rankings, my best bets of the day. Tonight, I'm going to go through and write up the matchups and figure out all these Washington receivers to get a couple sentences in for all these guys too.
And you can follow him at Hayden Winks. I am at Not J Daigle. I will be back at the normal Building Blocks time on Friday with an overarching big picture article on the Sunday DFS slate. But yeah, until then, RotoWorld Football Podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe. We already have a preview show for Thursday up with Pat. We already have a preview show for Sunday up that all four of us, Hayden,
it's
myself,
a good one,
Pat included. Yeah, we went long on that one despite only having Wednesday's injury reports. And you can find that there later tonight. It should get published by Josh. So anyways, thanks for tuning in. Good luck to everyone. And again, we will be back to our normal Friday recording next week. Good luck.